The 2000 annual town meeting for the town of Sunderland, and according to my calculations, we've been in business for 297 years, and I don't know whether this is the 297th meeting or not. I don't know if there was one. This probably was. Appreciate everybody coming out, and I'd like to begin the meeting with a pledge flag, which is over on the left-hand side of the stage. I pledge to the flag. One of the things that we get to do as a moderator, talk a little bit about people who have been influential in, and this year is dedicated to Mary Warner. Mary Warner lives up in North Sunderland, and she really carried on the long-term tradition of the Warner name in terms of service to the town. The name is synonymous with service, and Mary certainly epitomized that. She served on the Sunderland Committee, Frontier Regional School Committee, the Volk School Finance Committee, Park Committee, participated in the 250th anniversary of the town serving as chair. So she has been active the town of Sunderland, and we thank her for all of her efforts throughout the years. The other part of this is not one that I really enjoy, and that's the in memoriam of the people that have passed this past year who have been active in town. And this year we have 3 people. One is Edna Hearn. She lived on School Street, and she was very active in trying to improve the schools in town, and very active in Council on Aging. The other thing that she did that was, I guess we would have to say, outstanding, at least from my perspective, is that she gave birth to our fire chief in town, Bob Ahern. The second individual, Wally Ballounis, lived over here on Old Amherst Road, and he was a veteran, very active in Veterans Affairs. He was on the fire department and served in town for anything that you wanted to have done. You got in touch with Wally, and he did it. The other thing that I can say about him is that he was a damn good poker player, because the men's club in town, way back, after the meetings, which were held in the old town hall, we always had a poker game, and Wally always did pretty damn good at that. The third individual is Paul Crepita. Paul lived on Main Street and was very active in town government, serving as selectman for, it seemed like, umpteen years, and was very good for the town in the fact that he had all sorts of connections with the state legislators. So he caught their ears and significantly in that respect. So these 3 individuals unfortunately have passed, but they leave a legacy in town that is going to be somewhat difficult to follow. In terms of town service, if one looks at the annual report, there are numerous boards and committees that are available for people to serve on. Some of them are appointed, other ones are elected. So if you have a penchant to serve in town, I would urge you to look at what your strengths are. If not, you can match them to some of the committees and boards that need people. One of those committees that needs people is the Finance Committee. And if anyone is interested in serving on the Finance Committee, you can see me or the chair of the committee, Alex, and we can go from there. But definitely get involved in the goings-on of the town. Okay, in terms of introductions, and I'm the moderator, and my function is to make sure things run in order. And if they don't, I see 3 police officers here tonight, so behave. Other folks here at the head table, to my right is Wendy, the town clerk, and as I've said before, she's the only one that's important up here because she keeps the record, and whatever she writes is what happened, right or wrong. So Wendy is extremely important. After Wendy, Kavitz, Scott Bergeron, and David Pierce. These are the 3 members of the Select Board. The person on the end is Margaret Nardowitz, who is the town administrator. And as many of you have read in the paper probably, Margaret, unfortunately, is going to be leaving the town of Sunderland. She has accepted as the first town administrator for the town of Rutland, Mass. And from my perspective, I would like to thank Margaret for all of the work that she has done for the town. And one of the things that I think happened over her watch, I going to numerous select board meetings during the budget time, and watching Margaret interact with the board and provide them with the information that they needed, she really raised the bar in terms of what it means to be, I think, a town administrator in a small town like ours. So Margaret, we thank you very much. Behind the Board of Selectmen is the town council, and his name is David Jenkins. So if we run into any problems with the legalities, we have Dave to back us up. Other folks on the podium or the stage are the Finance Committee, and Alex Kogesta is the chair, Bruce Bennett, and Mark Zinan. So these are this is the committee that puts the budget together, interviews with the department heads, and does all the work in terms of the number crunching, sits in the Board of Selectmen, and comes up with the budget that you see before you tonight. Other folks here tonight are people from the different schools. Marty Barrett, who is the superintendent of Frontier Regional, and those folks are sitting in the back. Ben Barszewski, who is the principal here at the elementary school. Darius Modesto, who is the principal at Frontier. Laverty, who is superintendent of the Franklin County Technical School. Also here from the Frontier Elementary School, Patty Kavanaugh from the business office. Okay, the first order of business as far as the meeting is concerned, we have to have the notice of the posting of the warrant to say that we in fact have a valid meeting.
Pursuant to within warrant, I have notified and warned the inhabitants of the town of Sunderland by posting up attested copies of the same at the town office building, the Sunderland Public Library, and the Sunderland Post Office, 7 days at least before the date hereof, as within directed. Frederick A. Laurinaitis, April 16th, 2015, at 11 a.m.
Thank you. We have a valid meeting. In terms of expediting, I would like to entertain a motion that we dispense with the reading of the motions. You all have copies of the motions before you, and rather than read them, all we can say is, we move article or whatever, so we won't have to read them. So I would entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to dispense with the read of the warrant. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, thank you. We need to have some tellers sworn in case there are some standing or ballot votes. And I would ask Sherry Ellsworth, Vinnie Grandonico, Mary Ann Gunderson, and Dana Roscoe to come forward to be sworn in. While they're sworn in, two things as far as running the meeting is concerned. Cell phones. I would appreciate it if you turn your cell phones off, or at least put them on buzzer. I got to do my own here. The second thing is, to speak, please use the microphones the microphone in the front of the room. And it's the wish of the TV crew that if you don't use the microphones this year, they're going to put a request in next year for budget to have tasers. So if you use the microphone, then you're going to get tased. If you can't come to the front of the room, we also have a mobile speaker or a microphone. And the last thing is, you'll notice that the room is set up a little bit differently tonight. And the idea is to get people closer together, make it more friendly so that we can get decent discussion. And I'd also like to mention that this was brought to our attention by a resident in town saying that, maybe we could do things to increase the attendance, discussion, and make the meeting more lively. So we thank the public for taking an interest, and if anybody has any suggestions, let us know, and we'll be glad to follow through if we can. Okay. Article 1.
Move Article 1. Second.
Is there a second? Okay, motion's made and seconded, which is the town reports. Any discussion?
I went online to try to find the town report. I couldn't find it any place, and I think that the citizens should have the right to get the town report early and be able to read it and figure out what's going on. I just saw the town report tonight for the first copy, so I'd like an explanation of why it's not available to everybody.
I think it's due to a delay in getting some of the reports from boards and committees.
Then how can we vote on an article that we don't know what the reports say or anything?
Mr. Moderator, I believe the article says move that the town votes to hear the reports of the selectmen, etc. The town report is available. Unfortunately, the web link right now is not available.
Pardon?
It was last night. I put it up last night. It's not there now, so I have to go and fix it.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor of Article 1, please say aye. All those opposed, nay. I declare it unanimous. Article 2.
Mr. Moderator, I move Article 2.
Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded to pay some old bills.
Mr. Moderator, there are three components here. One of the components, of course, is a sewer users charge to public safety complex. Second, prior year bills for part-time wages, and that was a function of contract wages not being adjusted during the payroll year. And that's what this $3,000 is covering. That had to do with hourly rate and a payroll function.
Okay. Any discussion?
Mr. Marty, if I may, please, just so everyone knows, the sewer runs on what we call an enterprise fund. So that fund, basically, the people on the sewer users are not everybody in our town of Sunderland. So water and sewer to each of the public buildings are charged independently, and each entity pays so that one group is not subsidizing the other. That's why we had a bill. Unfortunately, there was 2 years that were missed at the public safety complex paying the sewer bill.
Good, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, paying old bills requires a 4/5 vote. So, all please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. I declare it unanimous. Article 3.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move Article 3.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to spend some money for ice and snow. Any explanation?
Based on the weather outside, we may still be doing this. As you know, the weather, the way it was, over the years, both the snow materials as well as the labor has grown incrementally in the operating expense budget, but very, very incrementally, not nearly enough to keep. The state does allow for deficit spending for snow and ice, and as well as other emergencies, and this is this year's overage, if you will. And frankly, based on inches of snow, not bad.
Let's hope it's over. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of Article 3, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Declare it unanimous. Okay, Article 4.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move Article. And the town clerk, while the town clerk is elected, pretty much the town clerk's position follows our personal bylaws in town.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of Article 4, please say aye. Opposed? Nay. Declare it unanimous. Article 5.
Move Article 5, Mr. Moderator.
Okay. Motion's made and seconded. This isn't something we see too often. We're decreasing expenses.
Actually, Mr. Moderator, in the last couple of years, there have been authorizations where a project comes in through the bidding process, and that comes in less than the anticipated borrowed costs. And if we want to go back and rescind that vote to be accurate, it allows for not only our borrowed capacity to have its cap, but the folks who do our bond rating happen to like it quite a bit, not having articles out there with debt that's not being serviced. So this is actually with regard to the sewer lining project. And again, we're looking to rescind $347,000 worth of that original $670,000. The project came in at about $325,000. So effectively, you take it off. We take that off.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? Any discussion?
If I could, Mr. Moderator, another example was a culvert over on Hadley Road that came in well under town meetings appropriation, and we rescinded that article the subsequent year.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of Article 5, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Okay, Article 6.
Mr. Moderator, while we're busy rescinding things, I'd like to move Article 6, which is the same, basically the same explanation, only in this case, it's for the energy saving performance contract for the town.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Again, we're decreasing the amount of borrowing authorization by $84,000.
Mr. Moderator, if I may, please, one of the other things that what we try to do by taking these numbers off from the books, big corporations worry about their bond ratings. Well, little town of Sunderland worries about its bond rating also. And over the last 10, 12 years, our bond rating has continually gone up. One of the measurements of bond rating is your ability to incur debt or pay debt. Now, by reducing our debt, makes us look a lot better in the eyes of those guys that come around every couple of years from Standard & Poor's and other companies. So these are good things for us to do.
Thank you.
Question? What is this?
This energy performance contract.
This is basically the energy performance contract, and what we did is we contracted with, was it Siemens, I believe? With Siemens to basically set up guaranteed energy savings throughout the town. So that can range from LED lights to new controls for the heating systems, things like that, of that nature. And that's for all the town buildings.
It was done in 2 buildings in particular, the public safety complex and the elementary school. They put in computerized controls to allow the heating systems together and not, for example, in this building where you have 2 boiler systems, to be able to coordinate those so you're not heating separately. Just more efficiency in these projects and more savings.
Mr. Moderator, if I may, thank you also, Susan, for that question, because that was one of the things that also that we maybe not get out there enough. This is actually a performance-based contract also, so the numbers that Siemens predicted have to be met, and the numbers that we are looking for savings have been met, so we're actually saving costs on our utilities through the energy upgrades that we've worked on. When you look at the total cost, it's the payback over 20 years. So you're looking at the payback that we get over 20 years is equals what we put into it plus. Right now, we're way on the plus side of energy savings. And one of the reasons some of these monies that we've gotten also are due to the fact that we're a green community as well.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay. All those in favor of Article 6, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Okay, at this point in time, we are going to jump to Article 14. And the reason is the main budget, the omnibus budget for the town. And within the omnibus budget is monies from the CPC. And the monies from the CPC haven't been appropriated yet. So what we have to do is get that article for the appropriation of the CPC money done first. And as soon as we get that done, then we'll go back to the omnibus budget, which is Article 7. So we have to get 14 done before we begin 7. So Article 14.
I'd like to move Article 14, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Article 14 is made and seconded. Richard, do you want to speak to that, please? Richard Lepatka is the chair of the CPC committee. Community Preservation Fund is what CPC stands for.
Okay. I'm the short one, too. Okay. So, good evening. I think I'd like to put the CPA activities in overview to briefly get started and then get to this one particular article. So in the back handouts is our letter that's in the annual report, if you had your annual report. And if you want to see what we're doing and get a feel for us, I recommend you take it home with you and read it. What it says basically is we started being part of the CPA, Computer Preservation Act, in 2010. And since then, we've been submitting for projects and have been getting 100% match from the state in terms of working these programs that are qualified under Community Preservation Act. There are 4 categories. There's open space, there's historic, there's community housing, and there's recreational or broad other categories. So last year, we had an active year. We had 6 active programs. 2 of them are already completed, including one that was done in a regional way with other towns that are sending students to Frontier. We have 2 projects that will be wrapping up this spring that are within a rock's throw from where you're sitting right now. And we have 2 longer projects that are going to take some more time, but may be very interesting and good for us as we go forward. One having to do with our pathways and transportation around the community and so on, and the other having to do with community housing. So it's a very active committee, and still going strong, and the ideas are getting bigger and better, I think, as time goes on. So this year, we do not have a submitted project to bring to the floor here. We had 1 application. It was from the Firemen's Association to redo a 1923 fire truck. So it would be a job of fixing it up and making it useful. And, so it's a restoration historical project. That is in works. It was submitted to us, but we've all agreed that more homework has to be done, more digging about the details and working the finances. So if things go well, maybe we'll be hearing about this fire truck next year. So that's where we've been. Where are we going? This budget article we've been looking at every year we've been up here. We haven't had to pay too much attention to it up till now. You'll see a series of numbers here, so let me go through them. If I can find them myself. Okay, they were somewhere here. What page is this stuff on? Excuse me. Article 14 has about 6 numbers. So let me explain the article. The article is both an appropriation and an ability to reserve funds to match the 10% requirements of CPA. So the first 2 items are appropriations. The first item is for support of administrative expenses and labor support for the daily practices and homework we have to do as CPA people. I'll tell you that we have a very active CPA committee. 7 of us, just about everybody in the committee represents another committee. So it's kind of challenging to do your basic work and then go on and represent your committee as another step forward. So we could use a little help. CPA allows us to take some of our resources and spend it for administrative support. So we're in the process of trying to find somebody that can work with us in a support administrative way. We have a job definition approved. We're looking for people. There's a job posting on the town website. So if you're interested in working a few hours and helping us in CPA, you may be interested in the open position. That position and the other expenses we have that go with the CPA activity are budgeted for $6,000. The law allows us to spend up to 5% of our revenues for this support function. So that's what that is. The big new thing for us in CPA and on this article is the ability to cover the debt of borrowing to purchase the land on North Main Street. And what we're doing with this next number in the article, the $25,774, that's FY06's cost of borrowing in support of the purchase of that property. And the way we figure that out is we look at how much do we have to pay over the life of the borrowing. And the CPA had provided in the previous article in September $265,000 to purchase that piece of property and cover the purchase price plus the principal and the interest. So we also had decided that we'd want to do it over 10 years. So the number comes out to be what a typical year would be $25,774 is the yearly charge in borrowing for purchasing the property. Good news of that is that basically it's matched by the state, so it's really not all our money. It's not what is your money from another indirect source, but in terms of our own property taxes, about half of it hopefully will be that, and the rest of it will be matched by the state. So what we do in this article is we ask that debt service be voted for, and that figure in particular will be used to pay off the expenses. There's 2 payments a year. And if we go for 10 years, it's paid off, and we're done, and we own the property right out. Another interesting twist to this, not to make it too complicated, but we're required to spend 10% of our funds in 3 categories: historic preservation, open space, and community housing. So that number is nicely over the 10% or so that would be needed for the first year, and next year, and next year, and next year. So we satisfy our obligation in community housing by this one project for 10 years. And believe me, this is actually a major thing and a good thing for Sunderland. Lots of towns, in fact, it's said that this particular topic is the most difficult topic to address with CPA. Towns have a really hard time finding property and figuring out how they can go after community housing. So we have a project to work on, fits right into our numbers from a budget management point of view. So the opportunity here to prove that is right in front of you. Now the other two numbers that follow, 20,000, are a little over 10% categories, and those numbers say we're going to reserve because we don't have any money to spend any projects in the next 2 categories of open space and open space and historic. So those we just put in a reserve category to satisfy our 10%. Okay? So to put that all together, we come up with a number at the end that takes the rest of the money we'll be seeing in 2006, $100,997, and that's reserved as a category of undesignated budget. So by the time you add up the numbers for this coming year, FY06, that's how we want to allocate the funding and reserve it for the uses we have now and the uses we have later. And this is the first time, it's a little complicated, it's the first time we've introduced the idea of using future revenues to pay current bills, and that this allows us to allocate the future money coming in to pay for the land purchase. So I hope that wasn't too complicated, but that's what it is. A couple more thoughts and I'll be finished. We understand that as we progress here, we're getting a little better at what we're doing. Our first application of CPA was 4 years ago, and a gentleman over here submitted it from the library for like $400. So we went from an application of $400 to this to $265. So we're growing in our understanding of how to do things and how to take care of the right things at the right period of time. So our next stage is to get to a more strategic thinking on how this would all work. And the idea we'd stand back and look at this over, say, 10 years and look at how do we want to spend this money that we have where it all fits together. They're not just individual projects, but they have a bigger bang to them in their terms of they fit together. So this fit, the community housing is an important fit to that. And we have a major initiative developing over time right now called the Pathways Projects, which are looking at a lot of transportation, connection, and center of town things that may come together, including some work maybe in the area of recreation on the river. So we put all that together, and we have the potential of really leveraging very significantly what we have here. Our goal then will be better leveragers. We've done very well this year, as many of you know, in terms of people volunteering, offering their time, their professional skills, and lots of other things to get a high level of accomplishment out of a smaller dollar. So we want to keep doing that. We want to do a little more regionally. This is the first year past that we did anything across towns, so we got more to do there. And we just got an opportunity to put it together with much more higher impact. So that's kind of where we are. That's the bit with all these numbers, and gives you a sense for the future. Yeah.
Excuse me. If you would please use the microphone, because the acoustics in here are terrible. Thank you.
Nora Zinen, North Plain Road. I just want to, I like the fact that you're working on transportation issues in the center of town, but I want to emphasize that those of us who live on the outskirts of town also want sidewalks and bike paths.
Yes. Thank you for that reminder. I think you're absolutely right. As a matter, there's been a fair amount of conversation about your area of town, and so it's not passed up in terms of discussion. It's a challenge because, as you know, it's a difficult crossroads, and you don't have a lot of space on the road, but there's a lot of people. There's no question about that. So we understand. It is talked about in the picking of where we're going to focus and what we're going to do in the next couple of years. I'm sure you'll see us take a look at that and make sure we haven't overlooked it. Okay? Any other thoughts?
Any other questions, comments? Okay. No other questions or comments? All those in favor of Article 14, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. I declare it unanimous. Okay, now back to Article 7. Okay. Article 7.
Move Article 7.
Okay, motion's made and seconded.
Second.
For Article 7, which is the omnibus budget. Now, material that you picked up on the way in, you should have a sheet that says Town of Sunderland FY16 Town Meeting Budget. Okay. That sheet, or those sheets, list all of the expenses, proposed expenditures for the town. And the way that we've handled this in the past is that, for discussion's sake, I'll go down through the list. For example, total general government. Recommended budget, $394,611, or 3.6% increase. We won't discuss it at that point, and if anybody is interested in discussing it, we'll put a hold on it, and we'll go through the whole budget, and then come back, and then we'll discuss the hold items. Okay? So, yep. The selectmen would like to make a presentation in terms of an overview that will include sources of revenue as well as the expenses.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Forgive my gravelly voice. There's about 3 pages up front marked Sunderland 2016 town budget. It's got a couple of bullet points we'd just like to go over as we start. This year, of course, the budget process starts in early November and rolls on from there. And in this current cycle, although we are still living in the shadow of 2009, 7 years later, we are still dealing with some of those fiscal pressures, and that's really not necessarily unique to the town. Anybody who pays attention to the news, both on the business side or on the government side, recognizes where the economy's been. But over that same period of time, part of our revenues come from the state in the form of a cherry sheet, and the general government portion of that cherry sheet actually is still about $61,000 less than it was in 2009. The portion of the cherry sheet that actually is funding education, although it looks like a plus at dollars 7 years later, it's in no way does it keep up with the costs of running the schools in our town for both the education school as well as the districts we support. So cherry sheet comes out in two ways. It comes back with the money that's going to be delivered to the town, and then there's an assessment or cherry sheet offsets. That's things like the PVTA offset. There are a whole host of pilot monies and things that are reduced on the cherry sheet. So we get a little bit in the front, and then they take it away on the bottom. Over that same period of time, from 2009 to 2016, our actually grown by over $220,000. So you can see we lose on the revenue side, and that gap grows dramatically when the actual payback increases. So that equates to, frankly, we have to carry more of our own burden. And you're going to see, unfortunately, a grayscaled chart coming up. But when you start talking about the revenues over that same period of time, that chart's gone from 50% of the town covering itself to nearly 68%. Move on there to revenues if we could. We get revenues by category. The biggest piece you got there, again, you guys have a grayscale, and I did this at home, so I can actually, and sorry about the font down the bottom. That's actually for David and Tom. They like that number 2 font a lot. That said, budget. Local receipts like licenses, excise taxes, etc., they pick up another 7%. So effectively 70% of what you're about to appropriate and discuss, you fund, and it stays right here. State covers about 14% of our revenues, and that's directed straight to education. And then there's another 8% of state revenues that come to the town in what's called unrestricted general fund. That comes straight. There's a little piece in there, the little wedge that turns into the other small Death Star, is actually a composite of all the other revenue streams. Everything else in that little sliver turns into orb number 2, and it's things like the sewer users who pay for the sewer district. It's also revenues applied toward things like debt service. So that's where all the money actually comes from. And this year here, we're looking at a revenue appropriation of $1 million. That's going to be back on the actual budget sheets. You'll see that in a minute. On our expense side, we had expense growth in 2016 of about $1,000, really driven by 3 areas. And as we go through the list, the actual budget, when you have the opportunity to put a hold on, we can drill down on these. The elementary school came in with a request, an approved request of $52,600. So out of the $110,000 worth of growth, you're sitting in the building that will account for nearly half of that. Benefits and insurance are our next big driver this year, and there's a series of things we have in years. Our estimates for our contribution for things like Medicare, Medicaid, workers' comp, unemployment, entire package level. And we've been told by the treasurer collector that that's not really a good thing to do anymore. We need to increase those. And then lastly, we have another student going to the tech school. And the tech school has got a really interesting format in that, although there's an assessment formula, really headcount is the driver there. It's almost the cost of attendance, depending on, for the town of Sunderland. Other towns, it's not quite the same. So that's about $22,000 of our $110,000 worth of growth. And our remaining expense growth goes throughout the budget, $35,000 $41 is really the extent of it. And our total percentage is about 1.6%. If I could back up 1 minute to those remaining pieces, we have a new police contract this year. That was one of the longer negotiations, very civil, one of the longer negotiations we've had in the last 3 cycles. And it's not a significant increase. When you get to the police budget, you'll see that that's one of the drivers there. And another driver is an increase in some of the part-time wages. So I want to go one page ahead. And again, this is the overview. We have plenty of opportunity to discuss this. We'll talk a little bit about our history from 2009 to here and why that's important. Vote on a budget annually, and then we kind of move on and through it. You get a couple years forward and you look back and go, damn. And that's what this thing happens. 2009 was really a threshold year for us. And so we started looking back a couple. Pause before I cough. Years ago, what was 2009 and how long does it take us to get there? So 7 budgets later, we've had a total budget increase of $391,000, or about 6%. And if you actually include the debt and wastewater, and it's important when we look at the spreadsheet that is the budget, we keep debt and wastewater the operating budget. Primarily because wastewater is self-funded. Users pay for it. That's it. We have to appropriate it because we're town meeting. That's what we do. On the debt side, debt is not raised as part of monies that are permanent to the tax rate. Everything that we have in the debt schedule is what's called excluded debt. It goes away, it actually drops off the tax rate. You benefited from that 2 years. The town benefited from that. We actually have some of that opportunity in some of our debt schedules this year. There it is. So the drivers over the last 7 years really have been in 3 areas. Of $391,000 in growth, our frontier assessment equates to about $313,000 of that. Here comes that candy. We have a new initiative a little over a year ago that we're seeing the first full year of implementation. And that's why you see a big spike in fire and South County EMS, about $194,000. And again, this is over this last 7 years. And then we have continued pressures with benefits and insurance of about $65,000. So when you look at those numbers, you go, wow, that is a lot going on, concentrated in a handful of areas. The remaining pieces of that difference come from either cuts that still exist from 2009 that have not been reestablished, continued expense reductions, and if you're a department head, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and then just steady growth. Now, we continue when all this is still going on. If you look back at the expanded expense sheets, which are available. If anybody really wants to drill down and spend some time with a spreadsheet, there's probably 25 copies around we can get to you. But in this same period, while all that pressure has gone on and the town has done yeoman's work to provide services to the community, and the taxpayers have funded that, you know, we've actually purchased down our debt from over $800,000 in 2009 down to $356,000 in the current year. That's just good stuff. You guys ought to all be proud of yourselves. As we look forward, we got another year coming up, and it's not quite Groundhog Day, but it's awful close. We continue in generating revenues. The reality is the state is not necessarily a reliable indicator. We kind of know that they like to take it away, especially on the assessment side of the cherry sheet, and they've given less and less over time. We also expect a challenge to generate free cash. And the mechanism for generating free cash is either you appropriate it, you collectively appropriate it, and it doesn't get spent. Or there are some programs like soldiers and vets benefits that are usually about 12 to 16 months in the rears. That is, we appropriate and then we're reimbursed sometime. And so that shows up in those years' free cash. There's a whole handful of those little threads that make up free cash, and that happens over a year. But it's really unreliable. We've been pretty good at predicting that, but very conservative estimates. And we have formed a process for distribution of that cash. Percentages get used in the operating budget, percentages get used, and percentages get used to generate free cash moving forward. And again, for people who haven't been through the free cash discussion, as of June 30th, it exists. As of July 1st, it does not. So it turns into an audit in the upcoming year. Anyway, so the next piece is, we have a little bit of growth over time with respect to state revenues, funding education, not so much in general government, and we know their assessments, the cherry sheets and our offsets go up. So that's for us. We know in the discussions over the last 2 years and the initiative taken again by the administration at Frontier about the impact of a declining school population, student population. Those costs are not directly proportionate. They're not linear. It's a very challenging problem that we're going to continue to work on going through the upcoming year. And then, frankly, anybody who's been around here a long time, and I've been now 20 years this year, we don't have a lot of growth. What we have is kind of what we have. Another challenge we're about to have, and we're going to see coming up in this current budget, is going to be this OPEB. You're going to hear OPEB, and don't roll your eyes like we all started rolling our eyes when we first heard it. That's our obligation for post-employment benefits. And we fund it. It's really interesting as we talk about it. We fund it in real time. There's a line in our budget that says we're going to fund insurance benefits, ... We want to be able to build a fund that's actually required, that at some point when that trust has enough value, we'll begin appropriating from that. You'll see it from a revenue stream. So for the foreseeable future, we're going to see essentially 2 appropriations. One is for the real cost, and one is going to be for the anticipated costs. We're going to find a way in the next 20 months or so, next couple of town meetings, to find a way to fund that in a programmatic manner. I don't need that either, but thank you so much. Appreciate it, Dave. And so that was kind of like Budget 101, what we've got on the revenues, where pressures are on our expenses, what we can anticipate next year. I think we should probably every couple of years have this look back and say, wow, what does it look like from 6 years ago to date? So thanks so much for your time, and thanks so much for coming out.
Scott, you've mentioned both free cash and stabilization. What do we have in those funds?
You, sir. Get my onion hat and go like that. There is a balance and use of various accounts sheet, and it should be out in the front as well. At the top, it's a handout. And we have an opening balance of $347,800 of free cash. That's certified. We have a $291,000, almost $800 stabilization. Title V, of course, is Title V of about $25,000. Remember, a couple of years ago, we voted to create capital stabilization and then passed that vote at an election. So we actually fund capital for the first time, like in a really, really long time. Let me say how long. Ever for that. And we have about $102,000 a year going forward. That has the capacity to raise by 2.5% per year. And because it's a trust fund, and it can only be appropriated for capital. So it's not going to fund my salary, my outrageous salary as a selectman. It's only going to fund things you get to vote for every year at this body. CPA Comcast Pay Access is something that we fund these guys with. Double right there, all these cameras. Your Monday night meetings, filming, etc. That's FCAT services of about $40,000. That comes from license fees, straight up. Those negotiations are winding up right now, and we should see what those percentages are soon. The CPA money that Richard was talking about, which now is nearly all of that initiatives, has gotten us so far $410,000. And again, as you look at the sheet, we're going to appropriate. So the top is what we're starting with, and then we're going to finish with what. And the waste treatment is an enterprise fund that runs at about $800,000 in current revenues. They also have a capital stabilization account that we fund, and they were actually, in many ways, the leaders in that. It was interesting. Being an enterprise fund, they were able to simply add that assessment on, set it aside, and begin the process. And it's really, really helped maintain that equipment quite to the fullest. And this is the last year you're going to see ambulance reserve. It was a fund years ago, and that fund is going away in that we no longer have an ambulance service. We participate in a regional ambulance service, and that's going to be an assessment service, and we'll simply appropriate it annually. This is the remaining funds, the $64,000 that you see at the top. This is the remaining funds of the last appropriation, and we're going to use those monies in support of the omnibus budget article specific to that, specific to the SCEMS. Everybody, if there's questions about the revenues, right up here.
Thank you.
You have a hand. Sure. It pays for retired teachers. For retired everybody's. It's a post-employment benefits package. So your pension, or my pension if I was a retired municipal employee, and my medical benefit funded. That's what the OPEB is.
Our liability now is approximately what?
Scary.
Scary? Rock, can somebody get the...
What's the actual number, Rock?
I have some actual numbers.
Hang on.
Good thing you're all sitting there.
Okay, so the town, in FY15, the town is paying in real time.
26.
The town is paying in real time health insurance for its retirees in the amount of about $48,465. Its accrued liability under OPEB, the annual required contribution would be $126,312, and the total town liability is $1,514,689.
Thank you.
That's a huge number. It's a number the town won't get to right away, won't get to for several years, but the town has an obligation to start funding it, and so there's no science, no real science behind the formula this year to start funding the OPEB trust fund. What the town is proposing, what the recommendation is to put in the budget, in the OPEB trust fund, an amount equal to half, 50%, of the town's FY15 obligation to retiree health insurance. So the town is proposing to fund the OPEB trust fund in the amount of $24,233.
Mr. Monitor, we go through these cycles, and this is one of the things that is trying for every municipal and state organization right now. And the how to fund it, the mechanism to fund it, the incurred liability that we have for not paying to such an extent. Most of our accountants and our control people that do our auditing are having they're having sticker shock when they're seeing how much. So not only does the town of Sunderland, but it's Frontier, the regional, because Frontier Regional is a separate organization. So in their budget, they're looking at funding OPEB. Also, we also belong to the Franklin Council of Regional Governments. They are in the process of trying to figure out how they're going to fund liability as well. So it's something that's really spread across our state, our entire state right now, Susan. Yes, we are.
Okay, are we ready to begin the budget? Okay, remember, we're going to go down through the budget, and anything you want to discuss, just say hold, and then we'll come back to it. So under general government, the proposed budget is for $394,011, or a 3.6% increase. Total town buildings. The proposed recommended budget is $139,932, an 8.8% increase. Police Department. Total budget is $389,977, or a 5.8% increase. Hold. Okay, and while we're on the police, we have a new officer in town. His name is John Broder, standing at the rear of the room.
Welcome,
John.
It would be the only time you'd ever seen John, so you may want to say hi to him now.
Okay, total fire department, $317,130, or a total increase of 0.2%.
Hold, Mr. Moderator.
Oops. Okay, inspector election, $48,438, an increase of 6.1%. Total highway, $259,504, an increase of 3.8%. Total health and sanitation, $24,278, an increase of 1.8%. Library, $123,006, an increase of 3%. We come to the school budgets. Total elementary, $2,156,600, an increase of 2.5%. Total Franklin County Tech Assessment, $158,406, an increase of 16.4%. Hold. Okay, total frontier assessment, $723,452, a decrease of 4.8%. Total benefits and insurance, $582,149, an increase of 9.2%. Total miscellaneous and reserve fund, $113,700, an increase of 1.9%. Hold. Is that where OPEB is?
Benefits and insurance.
What's that?
Benefits and insurance.
Okay. Yes. So giving us a total operating budget of $6,431,183, or overall 1.6%. Okay, the wastewater treatment plant. The total wastewater treatment plant budget is $346,853, an increase of 1%. Total debt and interest, $326,224, an increase of 0.1%, giving us a grand total budget of, I think it's the grand total. Yep, that's the grand total. $7,104,260, 1.6%. Okay, in terms of discussion, There was a hold on fire department. What's that?
The police, someone held on police.
The police, oh, okay, right, that's my mistake. Police. Who had questions on police? Russ?
Hi, I'm Russ Crenshaw. I just wanted to make a quick editorial comment on salaries in town, and something that I've noticed is that there's, if you look at the numbers, I don't know what the latest police contract is, but I do know that over time it's consistently higher than other town employees, and there's been a gap that's been over the years. This is not to say that police don't deserve the money they get, but it needs to be acknowledged that it's occurring, and it's becoming greater and greater as these things compound. 2, 3, 4% raises for in the police as compared to 0 and 1% consistent raises or no raise for other town employees, including the highway department. And that's one thing if it's over a year or two, but when it's been over any number of years, there's this huge increasing gap that everybody should know is that something needs to be done at some point. We have only a certain amount of money that we can draw upon, and I think we need to decide that there may be a need to change how that gets split between the different employees in town.
Thank you.
If I could, Mr. Moderator, Russ, very good points with respect to payroll. The difference between organized and open, negotiate with a fair amount of unions, and I would say that in the last 3 in particular negotiations, there have been both at the schools as well as with the police. Well, since we're on the subject of the police in that category, it wasn't too took 1, 1, and 1, took 0, 1, and 1, and this is the first time ever in year 1 that they've had a 4%, and there was that as being part of anyway, there's a lot of discussion about that. They also recognize that going forward, the town's ability to pay negotiations, they were very cognitive of that, and there was a very lively discussion, and that's the only year that's outside of 2.5% in the current contract. You're absolutely right, the way contracts work and how they feed forward. So it's something that certainly the board and as well as the labor unions are aware of. But thanks for raising the
All right, anything else on police?
Mr. Moderator, also, that the police budget up what it is that we have put in that budget an additional amount of money for part-time wages. Basically, what we want to do is give the chief the ability to maintain staffing to replace on vacation, then are sick or personal time. So what we did is we recognized that we have to look at the total. I think the chief came in, was looking for $50,000 for additional part-time wages, and what we did was go 20. As you see, a 4% for this year for some of the wage increases. That really is not what's driving the total cost of this budget. It's more the $23,000 that we put in to try to keep our service to the public consistent. So I would offer that as well.
Okay, anything else on police? Okay. The next hold is Franklin County Tech Assessment. What's that?
Fire.
You're right. Fire. Total Fire Department.
Mr. Moderator, I just wanted to take a second to let the assembled Sunderland understand that one of the reasons that this budget is what it is because most of this money went to the fire chief for his salary. He been working very hard. We thought we'd reward him with $194,000. Bob, congratulations. But I did want to take a minute to. The town was very generous a very short time ago, allowing us to start the South County EMS service. And I couldn't miss the opportunity to talk about the success of that program to date. Just the other day, there was a cardiac in Deerfield where they got a save. We're down to a little minutes on average on response times, bringing paramedic service. We'd like, the Board of Selectmen, our EMS people would like to thank you for giving us the opportunity. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly what it's costed us yet. We have a pretty good idea. It's amazing. When we were looking at our budget numbers, just the numbers that were coming from, we were trying to figure out how to split up the cost. And we had a 51% for Deerfield, 36% for Sunderland, 17%. And we actually see our numbers from our EMS. And when you look at the number of runs to each community, where our breakdown is right on those numbers. Our revenue numbers are at the present time are at the predicted levels. We're still in the process of growing. We may come in learning, more importantly learning, but we want to take an opportunity. I am on the Board of Oversight, and I want to take an opportunity to let you know that your investment is paying dividends. There's people that are getting the services that they need. Our next big thing is looking at a permanent home for our EMS people, and we'll probably be talking to you about that in the very near future. We need another year to really start firming up our numbers and bring back to you all accurate numbers so that we can start giving you good numbers. So we'd like to thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, anything else on fire? Okay, Franklin County Tech Assessment.
I just wondered what the 16% increase is for.
What's that?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, Susan. We have an additional student that's attending, and that's the nature of it. And with respect to our base assessment, there's not a significant increase in that. It's a 19-town district, so it's spread out pretty far. But when a student takes off and leaves, a student from Sunderland chooses to go to the tech school, we've seen bumps somewhere between $17,000 and $20,000 pretty regularly. This one happens to be $24,000.
So that's going to the tech school instead of the high school?
I'm not sure where they're going from, but the assessment from this tech school is based on our student population there. Whether they chose, whether it's a new student going, or it's not choice, it's actually a direct assessment.
And if I may, Mr. Roderick, one of the other things that we haven't seen in a couple of years, but it could happen, is that if a vocation or technical program isn't available at Franklin County Tech, we may actually have an assessment, and we have had special town meetings to pay for if a student chooses to go to Smith Vocational. There could be expenses for that, and I think right now they're $22,000.
It was up there.
Or so we have a rate for that. Franklin Tech doesn't have. We have a 5-year roll with Frontier, so our cost is rolled over 5 years. We don't have that with the tech school. It's just whatever students are going, you pay for. And I think last year we lost 3 students, so we had a significant decrease, and now it went up again this year.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything on the tech school? Okay. One of the things that's going to be coming up with the tech school is that you've probably read in the paper about some capital improvements to the tech school. And since there are 19 member towns, we're all going to be responsible for paying a portion of it. Now, the bond fund will be, the vote for that will take place on Tuesday, June 23rd. And in order to explain it more carefully, the superintendent of the school, John Laverne, is here tonight, and if he wants to say a few words to that, he'd be more than welcome. The tech school, from what I read in the paper, has been very innovative in some of the programs that it's developed, and is to be, I think, congratulated on that respect.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members of the town meeting, select board, and finance. Franklin County Tech is coming out to our towns for the first time since 1976 to get permission to borrow. Similar to Frontier Regional, we need to get permission of all the member districts, member towns. Unlike Frontier, our regional agreement does not call for an individual vote at each town meeting. State law is cited that we have to hold a district-wide election in all 19 towns on the same day during the same hours. No less than 4, no more than 8. Franklin County Tech will incur the costs that the town clerks in each town incur to hold this election on our behalf. We've been selected by the Massachusetts School Building Authority for an accelerated repair program to replace all of our windows and doors, which are original to the building. We also asked to get a roof because our roof leaks. And the state said, no, it's not 20 years old, it's 19. Unfortunately, with the storm we had this past week, water found its way into our building and shorted out our fire alarm system. We've had to have a fire watch all 24 hours a day during this time period and just incurred $5,000 in emergency expenses for a Band-Aid. So we do need a roof. So we're going to do a repair of our roof, and that's a separate question. We also have a third project, which is paving. Our driveways and parking areas are, again, original to the building. So there's a little pamphlet in the back, way in the back in the hallway. It describes what's going to happen, what are the ballots, and basically based upon a projected interest of 5% with an estimated $2.465 million bond, the town of Sunderland's estimated capital assessment for all the projects would be approximately $13,241.24 a year for 15 years. So we're going to be meeting with the town clerks and look for an announcement of a special election, and it's going to be held from 12 noon to 8 p.m., again on June 23rd, 2015. Questions? The only determining factor is that a majority of those who vote in favor of the borrowing in totality, not on each individual town.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. The last item for a hold was total miscellaneous and reserve fund. I don't have that one.
Because I said it a little later.
Okay. Got to do a better job of marking these.
We got your back.
That's good. You need to. Okay, total benefits and insurance. Who had the hold? Stuart?
Thank you. I'm curious if there's a plan for the remaining $104,000 of free cash. And ultimately, it's an OPEB. I can turn it. So my question was whether there's a plan for the remaining $104,000 of free cash. Ultimately, my question is about OPEB, and if there isn't a plan, and since we're reserving more than our 3 to 5%, whether there's any objection to putting more into OPEB.
Ms. Moderator, what we do have, Stuart, is a few years ago between the board and the Finance Committee, we came up with a use of free cash. And that's in that plan, that leftover, that $104,000 that we plan on having left over, that we just want in case we have use of that, we need that money over the next course of the next, between now, June 30th, or to help supplement our budget next year. So there is a use by not using it, if that makes sense.
It makes great sense. Thank you. Isn't that why you set the 3 to 5% parameter on reserves? Okay, so right now you're $75,000 over that parameter. Okay, all right. So I guess my question is there objection to increasing the OPEB? Or do you want me to just make a motion?
Well, one of the things we can't do is increase it very much, because we're limited with not in terms of the dollars, but within the scope of the article. You know, you've got about 5% that you can increase, and that's it in that particular category.
If I could, Mr. Moderator, Stuart, the $104,000 remaining in free cash is what we have in the range we have left year on year to feed forward for free cash. We know that at least this part, unless something really goes wrong with the Schedule A. To your point about additional funds into OPEB, we do have another warrant article where we're going to be taking that windfall from the Franklin Regional Council of Government to pay back to the town, and using that and putting that in the OPEB trust coming in a future article. So we as I said in the early piece of the budget discussion, would like to, in the next budget cycle or two, have a programmatic way of funding it. We're kind of putting our foot in that water right now, and I would not like to I would try to convince you not to jeopardize a generation of free cash for the upcoming year. We actually have this $24,000 feeding into the operating budget, so it instills in town meeting the process going forward. And we're not just going to use a windfall and a windfall and a windfall. This one's actually on the tax rate, and we're hoping it stays there, continues forward.
Thank you.
And I think that's probably what we're trying mostly to do, is make it, put the OPEB in a programmatic budget. So we have that capacity under our levy capacity, so we're not taking free cash, which is really a one-time use of money. We're trying to avoid using free cash in that method.
Okay.
That said, the board has had discussions on the new recurring capital stabilization funding, and that's effect on free cash, and then the possibility of using some formulaic approach from free cash to fund OPEB, and to what level. So they have had discussions on that.
Thank you, Stuart. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, you're ready to vote the omnibus budget then. So in terms of what we're voting, it's listed under Article 7, and it comes up with a whole variety of sources and a sum total of $7,104,260. So that's what we're voting on. Okay. All those in favor of the omnibus budget as presented, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Article 8.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to, please.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to move free cash to capital stabilization.
Mr. Moderator, this may well be the last year we move cash into stabilization. This is an extension of that guideline. There's a windfall, but don't get me wrong. This is an extension of that policy between the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen about the effective use of kind of the three-legged stool, if you will. In this case here, we want to move it to capital stabilization, and an upcoming article will be funding a capital budget that this supports.
Any questions? One thing about stabilization funds, since they are to stabilize, so to speak, it takes a 2/3 vote to move money into them, and then it takes a 2/3 to move money out of them. So this requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of Article 8, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Declare it unanimous. Okay, Article 9.
Article 9, please. Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded to spend $130,645 out of stabilization to fund the capital budget. Is there any explanation on that?
Mr. Moderator, if I could please, basically if you could take out the, we have a actual plan, what we'd like to do and spend the capital. If you look on it, we're looking at a...
Excuse me, Tom. Everybody has that FY16 capital budget by funding source sheet? Okay.
If we look on that, the first thing we're looking at is replacing a 2004 police cruiser. The second is replacement of a 1985 Holder tractor that's used by the highway department for sweeping and plowing sidewalks, also for mowing at times. We have money to install a generator at the public safety complex and the highway garage. It's one generator that will be able to use at both facilities at the same time. We looking to replace the town's computer server. That will be Margaret's gift to the town of Sunderland as she departs. Also we're putting in a line. It started from the library, but we decided to look at town-wide versus just a library. It's an unanticipated building capital for repairs, such if you need equipment, a motor fails or something unexpected, we'd have money to do that. And also we're looking at the shared bucket truck with two other communities, and that's the town of Deerfield and Whiteley. And the final is in the that we pay from sewer reserve is energy retrofit, so they can control the dissolved oxygen levels at the wastewater treatment plant. We're presenting it as a plan. This is our capital plan. Everything on the plan can be discussed individually and can be removed. So if something, the town meeting decides to remove something, we can make a motion to have an item removed. But this way, what we want to start doing is bringing a plan, a capital plan, which we've heard many times from our community, is bringing a capital plan forward so that we're replacing items on a plan versus on a whim.
Thank you. Okay. If we go down through the plan, I want to replace a 10-year-old cruiser for $35,782. Any questions or discussion?
Mr. Moderator, if I could please, one of the things that we've heard from our residents, and it's actually been repeated from the Board of Selectmen, is that our residents do not feel that black cruisers with highly tinted windows is appropriate for the town of Sunderland. That message has been relayed, conveyed to the chief in about 6 years ago, and I think we're almost through those dark cruisers with dark windows, and they will not be coming back to the town in any time in the near future. So we will see black and white cruisers. Our officers will be driving in, and our officers will be rolling down the windows to listen on what's going on in the community, and they'll be getting out of their cruisers to talk to the people in our community as well.
Okay. Any other questions or comment on cruisers? Okay. The tractor, replacing a tractor for $27,111.
Mr. Moderator, if I could please, the Highway Superintendent, George Emery, does a lot with a very little. He has a very diverse crew that is very handy with hand tools, but we have 2 Holder tractors that are kind of the jack of all trade. They can't be used any longer. They have reached their life expectancy. The Highway, George has gone out, looked at different replacement options, and at the present time, he has located a piece of equipment. Believe it or not, it's called the Whacker, that he would like to purchase, and we have a potential to put out for bid on the Whacker, and we'll look. It's basically an $80,000 piece of equipment, and we're looking at being able to purchase it on over 3 years at a 0% interest at $27,000 a year.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay. Generator for public safety and highway garage.
Mr. Moderator, if I could, the fire department, through a series of wonderful connections, secured frankly a screaming deal from Mount Holyoke College on a beautiful generator, and that needs to be installed. Each of the facilities has standby power currently, but is limited. The public safety complex was built with a generator that came from the treatment plant, I believe. Correct, Bob? Right, from the treatment plant. And the generator system at the highway garage is sized for a couple of specific pieces of equipment. Interestingly enough, not the fuel dispensing. So if there's no electricity, there's not going to get much fuel. Right, so George has got a big strong arm, he's got to hand crank it. So this project here is to establish and install that generator with the automatic transfer switching that will cover circuits in both buildings. Again, that generator from Mount Holyoke is pretty impressive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Okay. Replacing a 7-year-old town computer server for $14,000.
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, in short, our server, which runs basically the entire town, is pretty much getting to be at the end of its life. And actually, as of either June or July, Microsoft will no longer support the operating system that it's on. So as kind of the lifeblood of our town, it's actually well over its expected life use. So we have to replace that, and also we are beefing up our security, because as anybody knows who's been reading the papers out there, I think we had at least 1 or 2 police departments in the state that were victimized by some of the scams out there, where they essentially had their whole system held hostage, and we'd like to avoid things like that. So this is basically to get ourselves a new server and keep the town running. So.
Okay. Thank you, David. Any comments, questions? Okay. Unanticipated building capital repairs, $7,000.
Basically, this line item started, this item in the capital stabilization started with the library. They have, part of their heating sources, they have some motors and pumps that would need to be, that are kind of getting towards their life expectancy. So they were putting this in anticipation. Fortunately, they're running well right now, but it made us start to think that this would be a good idea if we had a line item in our capital program that if something did, we lost a section of a boiler or a heat pump, whatever it is, we'd have an ability to pay without coming back to and we can start actually upgrading some of the smaller, we say smaller, but they're still very expensive components.
But this is for all town buildings, not just the library,
Correct. This could be used across all the town buildings.
Okay.
In the budget, under town buildings, there's an $11,000 increase. Is that in addition to this?
Actually, in the budget, Susan, that $11,000 increase is almost exclusively for electricity costs. This capital budget comes from a different pot of money, if you will, comes from capital stabilization, and we're presenting it as a budget. That $11,000 is anticipating the continued rise in electricity. Although we get a great deal on oil, we're kind of getting it rough with electricity.
Okay, any other questions on capital repairs? Okay, shared bucket truck.
This was, basically this was brought forward by the highway superintendent, and it's to help aid with the pruning of our trees in town, plus there's other needs for the bucket truck. We probably wouldn't go out and buy a bucket truck on our own, but the cooperation that we've had with the town of Deerfield and Whiteley, with the South County EMS and our senior center, is something that looks like it's a piece of equipment that we wouldn't go out and buy it by ourselves, but working together, we could get it and probably help clean up trees and other items around town that we haven't been able to do before.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay. Sewer reserve, energy retrofits, dissolved oxygen sensors. $18,814.
That is going to, that's an energy efficiency measure that the wastewater treatment plant is going to have done. The total project cost is actually going to be $27,000. $8,186 is going to be funded from the town's Green Communities Fund. So that's going to achieve some energy savings as well.
Thank you, Margaret. Any questions, comments? Okay, we're ready to vote on Article 9, which is to appropriate from capital stabilization the sum of $130,645 is for the purposes that we just went through. Again, this is a stabilization account. It requires a 2/3 vote in and a 2/3 vote out. So, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Okay, Article 10.
Move Article 10. Second.
Okay, Article 10 has been moved and seconded. This is an article that was submitted by citizens' petition, and one of the petitioners, Aaron Fabel, is here tonight, and he's going to briefly discuss what it's about.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, everyone. I'm actually not one of the petitioners, but I was asked by the petitioners to speak to this article. My name is Aaron Fabel, and I'm a member of the Sunderland Energy Committee, a committee that's now just about 10 years old, if you can believe it. The mission statement of our committee reads as follows: to advise the administrators and citizens of the town of Sunderland about ways to conserve energy, switch from fossil fuels to renewable energy resources, and to prepare for a future that relies less on oil, coal, and gas. And it is in that capacity that I am appearing before you tonight. I urge you to support the resolution in opposition to the Northeast expansion of the Tennessee gas pipeline in Massachusetts, which has now changed its name, and it is called the Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline. I believe that this construction of this pipeline would be a step in the wrong direction. Why is this project even being proposed? Well, in recent years, the 6 New England governors expressed concerns about possible shortages due to the closure of nuclear, oil, and coal electrical generator plants. So they asked the ISO New England, which is sort of the air traffic controllers, if you will, of the electrical grid, along with the New England States Committee on Electricity, to come up with a plan. And the plan they came up with was to increase the amount of natural gas flowing into our region by 0.6 billion cubic feet per day. And they also suggested, or rather mandated, that a tariff be levied on all electrical ratepayers to pay for this pipeline. The pipeline, slated to be 126 miles long, extends from the hub in Wright, New York, through Massachusetts, through the hill towns, and up into New Hampshire, and finally terminating in Draycote, Massachusetts, which is the terminal hub. It is not passing through Sunderland, though it's passing through some of our neighbor towns, Montague, Deerfield, Conway. And I will return to the question, why are we voting on this since it's not passing through our town directly? Kinder Morgan, which is the pipeline company that addressed the concern of the governors, has proposed a pipeline that is supposed to carry not 0.6 billion cubic feet per day, but 2.2 billion cubic feet per day, almost 4 times the capacity that was requested, 4 times the capacity that the ISO and NESCO thought was even remotely possible for us to consume. So where is that gas, extra gas, going to go? Good question. We have been told that this project is necessary because natural gas is clean, cheap, safe, abundant, and that we need it. In fact, it is none of these things. Natural gas in its production through hydraulic fracturing, as well as its transmission, leaks methane, which is the principal ingredient of natural gas, and that methane is a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. In fact, it's 86 times as potent as carbon dioxide over a 20-year period. Now, I just mentioned the size of the pipeline is in over capacity, what the ISO has asked for. Is it a coincidence then that the Maritime and Northeast Pipeline, which connects with Draycote, Massachusetts, has just applied to reverse its direction? In other words, take gas not into Draycote, but out of Draycote and into Canada, where companies such as Canaport LNG has applied for export permits. So it seems as if a lot of this gas is not going to stay in the region. It's not really Northeast Energy Direct, but it's going out. We haven't heard very much about it, but if you were Kinder Morgan, would you want to advertise that fact? Probably not. So we don't need more natural gas in the region. In fact, we need less. According to the benchmarks established by climate scientists and by members of our government, including the NSF, we need to reduce our usage of fossil fuels by the year 2050 by 90%. So just transferring to another fossil fuel, especially one that's as potent a greenhouse gas as methane, would be a step in the wrong direction. So what do we do to address our electricity needs? There are many other options other than constructing an oversized gas pipeline. Number 1, increase energy efficiency. Number 2, invest in renewable energy resources. Number 3, reforming natural gas market mechanisms to allow the market to regulate supply and demand and adjust accordingly according to need. Of these three, efficiency is by far the cheapest, cleanest, and most effective way. For each unit of energy we save, that's one less unit of energy we have to extract, transmit, and burn. And that's why the Sunderland Energy Committee has been going door to door in Sunderland, knocking on your doors and asking you to sign up for a free energy audit and take advantage of the opportunities provided by Mass Save and Community Action for weatherization, for lighting retrofits, and for other energy improvements. This is the best possible usage we can make of the opportunity to increase the efficiency of our housing stock here in Sunderland and save energy, and thus make this pipeline project unnecessary and obsolete. I have not even touched upon the threats to health and to safety, and I would like to call upon Ben Clark, the co-owner of Clarkdale Fruit Farms in Deerfield. Ben is also a lieutenant on the Deerfield Volunteer Fire Department, so public safety is of great concern to him. He's been opposing the pipeline for over a year, and the pipeline was actually originally slated to pass right through the orchards. And if you've ever been to the Clarkdale Fruit Farms, you know what a beautiful, bucolic setting that is, and what a shame it would be for that pipeline to traverse that. So why are we voting on this resolution if we're not being directly affected by the pipeline itself and that it's not crossing Sunderland? Well, it may not be in our backyard, but it's going to be in somebody's backyard, and we ought to be concerned about that. The people of Deerfield, of Montague, they're our neighbors. I know with respect to Deerfield, our kids go to the same schools, they play on the same sports teams, people of Deerfield come to our library, come to our events, and as has been mentioned, we share emergency management systems. We may be separated by a river, but we breathe the same air, we drink the same water, and we eat food grown in the same soils. So I invite you tonight to join the other 43 towns and cities across Massachusetts that have already voted to oppose the pipeline project. This project, which is costly, unnecessary, misguided, and potentially dangerous. Thank you. With the moderator's permission, I'd like to introduce Ben Clark of Deerfield.
Okay. Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Aaron. So I'll keep my remarks brief, just to say that we've been affected since past year. We've been fighting this. We're celebrating our 100th year of our farm, the fourth generation there with my father, and we were really initially impacted, but it was going to be our orchard. Now they've shifted the route slightly. We still have some impact, but really it is, for me personally, is a health and safety issue. Is we're up where we are, and a lot of people out here too are on well water. We have a lot of concerns with the bore. If they are going to do some boring, major boring in Deerfield, and also blasting a rock, and how our wells will be affected. And then also the gas issue of high pressure natural gas. Recently, Kinder Morgan has had a few leaks in the pipe and actually some explosions, and they are in rural areas. Thankfully, you don't hear about them too much, but with me being on the fire department and having experience with small gas leaks, and the chief here could tell you too, and our first responders, especially talking about tonight, the South County EMS, that's also Sunderland residents. So if there is some issue, mutual aid call, we're all going to be affected. And then the gas, we're also looking at a meter station in Deerfield, and there's toxic chemicals are actually permitted by the EPA to be at certain levels in this gas. So they do off-gassing to regulate the pressure, and that'll be going in the air that all of us are breathing. So there's a lot of concerns that we have, and we're thankful that the Board of Selectmen in Deerfield has voted to keep the pipeline out, and we just ask that you folks tonight can ask to vote in support and solidarity. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions, comments, discussion? Okay. All All those in favor of Article 10, which is to recommend against the Northeast Pipeline, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay. I'll declare it by a majority. Thank you. Okay. It's roughly 9 o'clock. Why don't we take a brief break and reconvene in somewheres in less than 10 minutes. Hello. How are you? Okay, folks, if I could get you back in here, we can finish the warrant. Hello, hello, hello. Please. Okay. I guess that wasn't a good idea. Everybody left.
Since in front of me.
Okay. Article 11.
I'd like to move Article 11, Mr. Moderator.
Is there a second? Second. Article 11 has been moved and seconded, and this deals with OPEB.
Mr. Moderator, the Franklin Regional Council of Government over the last, since their existence, so I think they're like 10 or 12, 15 years old now, they've been paying into a retirement fund for all of the personnel. They've been paying a very high sum. And this year, they actually talked to the legislators, Stan Rosenberg and Steve Kulik, Paul Mark, and the other representatives that represent our area. They said, how come we're the only regional authority that has to be paying into this retirement and no one else is? And there's like 15 or 17 other groups. So they actually put legislation in, and it passed. Surprisingly, it passed. And so this is the money that we had appropriated for the COG to pay for their retirement. So they sent some money back to the town. We want to put it to help fund our OPEB commitment.
Okay, no, this OPEB commitment, that is, in fact, a debt that the town has. Is that correct? That it right now is unfunded?
It's a liability, but it's one of these things. Remember earlier how we were talking about the bond ratings of towns? This is one of the things that in the future that the Standard & Poor's and other bond raters will start looking at and saying, how are you prepared? So this is to pay for this liability or start putting money away for liabilities is just good, sound business sense right now.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments?
If I could, Mr. Moderator, as we talk about OPEB at this meeting and future meetings, maybe it's just wise to consider it a legacy cost.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No questions, comments? All those in favor of Article 11, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Article 12.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move Article 12, please.
Second.
Okay, Article 12, Reserve Fund for Payment of Accrued Liabilities. What does that mean?
Yeah, it sounds kind of daunting, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay, so what goes on is we've been talking about OPEB, if I could, Mr. Moderator. This is not that kind of liability. This is the creation of the article is to create a fund for accrued liabilities that are not post-employment. If town meeting, if there are anybody here last year? Anyway, just checking. You all look new. Last year there was a warrant article to pay for accumulated sick, etc. days, vacation days for 3 retiring employees. By creating this fund and in future years funding it in some way, those liabilities can be paid for from this fund as opposed to them landing by surprise at our annual town meeting. So I would consider this a reaction to last year's $80,000+ warrant article, and this would create a fund exclusive to those kinds of things. That said, there's currently no funding targeted for that this year.
Okay, so this is just establishes the fund.
This creates the fund.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions? Okay.
We talked about funding strategies for OPEB earlier. A funding strategy for compensated absences might be to consider the liabilities inherent to various departments, as well as funding the reserve from within annual department budget appropriations, including savings realized in years without large payouts. So a department might have fewer retiring employees one year and thus see savings in the budget that could be applied to this fund.
Thank you, Margaret. Any comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor of Article 12, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Article 13.
Move Article 13, Mr. Moderator.
Second.
Okay, this is $3,000 for long-range planning for Union 38.
If I could, Mr. Moderator, this is an initiative coming out of Frontier Regional, and the portion of funding this, the town of Sunderland, is about $3,000 over the course of the budget development and through the course of the school committee and efforts, regional school committee efforts. And I think actually one of the members of the finance committee is working with a member at UMass. It's to look at a combination of the impacts of population, either growth or declination, capacities of the structures, and what would a school look like, a school system look like in the future if this trend continues. And again, our portion is just $3,000. Frontier Regional is putting up 50%, and the towns are picking up the remainder.
So long-range planning for use of schools and what they might look like in the future. Any questions or comments?
Hi, Judy Pierce. Schools and municipal buildings, right? Not just schools.
Oh, school and municipal buildings.
Yep. In all four of the towns.
Okay, thank you.
This is actually, this is actually in response to probably one of the most critical. I mean, right now, 65% of our budgets go to pay for education and what's needed to house education. And now we're looking at a decreasing population. This is actually good stuff. We're kind of ahead of the curve before it overwhelms us. To look at the study now, to try to utilize our buildings better, to have the towns work better and closer together. This is actually an excellent plan. And actually, we had original thing was like a $48,000. The original plan was like a $48,000, and then the suggestion from Mark to go talk to the university. And we kind of like the university option because it's looking at it different. It's looking at it with a different set of eyes and not the same set of eyes looking at problem. So we think this is a creative way to solve this concern that we have.
Thank you.
Nora Zeinen, wanted to know about Sugar Bush Meadows. Is that still in the plan, and because that would dramatically increase our enrollment at some point?
That's not germane to this article, I don't think, is it?
Well, in a way it is, and if I could, the Sugar Bush Meadow is progressing through the zoning board at the present time. I mean, they're having regularly scheduled meetings, and you know, they had one in the Superior Court, so they're just going through that permit process right now.
I think there's a hearing on the 26th, if I'm not mistaken.
It's Monday night.
Monday night?
29th, or 27th.
27th? 27th.
7 o'clock in the town office building.
Okay, so there's a hearing on Sugar Bush Meadows, Monday night, 7 o'clock. in the Town Hall building.
Just to answer the question in relation to this article, the development of any housing units could potentially impact enrollment.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of Article 13, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Okay, Article 14, we've done.
Yep, we're skipping that, and then...
So Article 15.
Mr. Moderator, move to pass over Article 15.
Okay, want to pass over Article 15. This is something that is non-debatable, non-amendable. The only thing we can do is either vote to pass over it or take it up. And the reason that it's being passed over is that this article was put in as an alternate form if Article 14 didn't pass. So if Article 14 didn't pass, then it gave the Select Board an option of funding the debt service for 120, is that 120 or 126, 120 Main Street. So that's the reason why it's being passed over. Well, there's no debate, so. Okay, the only thing you can do is vote yes or no. All those in favor of passing over Article 15, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Article 16.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move Article 16, please. Second.
Whoops, I don't have Article 16 on my file here. Okay, Article 16 is for legal expenses for Sugar Bush Meadows.
Mr. Moderator, as mentioned a short time earlier, the zoning board is in negotiations with the developer right now in hearings. This sum of money, we believe, is what's necessary for the town to negotiate on and put them on a level footing with the developer over the next 12 months.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those supporting the expenditure of $5,000 for legal fees for Sugar Bush Meadows, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Article 17.
Move Article 17, Mr. Moderator.
Second.
Article 17 has been moved and seconded. Article 17 deals with using free cash to fund activities of the senior center.
Basically, Mr. Moderator, what this $3,008 is to help pay for, it's a budget shortfall, but when they were doing when we were creating the budget for the South County Senior Center, there were some indirect costs that were not taken into consideration by the town of Deerfield, which is a fiscal agent. So they let us know, and this is to help pay for some of the indirect costs to run the senior center.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All right. All those in favor of Article 17, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Article 18.
I'd like to move Article 18, Mr. Moderator.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to spend $2,000. I would suppose this is for planning or beer, one or the other.
Yeah, well, that's part of the planning. But actually, if I may, Mr. Moderator, I was actually thinking about this tonight. I wasn't around for the 300th, so I'd also like to make the pitch too that if anybody wants to get involved, well, I'm sure we'll have a lovely little committee for this and everything. So if anybody's interested in getting this big shebang off to a good start, come on down and let us know.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure if there'll be T-shirts or not, but you know.
Okay, any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor of spending $2,000 for an anniversary celebration, please say aye. All those opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Okay, Article 19.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move Article 19, please.
A second.
It sounds like this is another go-round for solar power.
If I could, Mr. Moderator, this is very much the motion that we brought forward to town meeting 2 years ago. This is another opportunity to present tax incremental credits for a developer on that PV system. This is integral to our purchase agreement.
So what does this mean? They're going to pay us taxes?
Well,
Or a pilot.
right. So, well, we'll get payments essentially, and this kind of goes back to one of the other questions about, I think when you were asking about the building, that one of those expenses, this is one of the things we're actually trying to offset is our energy usage. If anybody, think of it like a bigger version, if anybody here has had panels put on their house from Solar City, you essentially will be signing what's called a PPA, or a power purchase agreement. So we'll agree over the course of 20 years to buy electricity at a reduced rate. And in addition to the reduced rate of electricity, we don't get property taxes, but it's called a pilot, or a payment in lieu of taxes. So it's some type of income stream that's not exactly taxes, in addition to your energy savings.
Bruce?
Basically, what we're doing is we're giving a solar developer a break on paying the property taxes to the town. I personally am against payment in lieu of taxes. I don't think it's a good idea. They don't offer them to individuals that build big houses or small houses or anything like that. To me, it's not a good deal, so I'm voting against it.
Okay. Stuart?
The proposals just came in 2 weeks ago. We've gotten 4 proposals, and the last time the town discussed this, I believe that the annual revenues would be $16,000, or in that vicinity, plus the energy savings, plus the net metering credits. And to speak to the tax agreement, it could be structured either as a tax agreement or a pilot agreement.
So at this point in time, am I correct in saying that what the Select Board is looking for is the authority to negotiate and accept the contract?
Yeah, exactly. It's basically permission to go ahead with negotiating with the interested people.
Okay.
That's already a go.
And from what Margaret says, the proposals are already in? Okay. 4 proposals.
I could just give you another brief update. The proposals are in. The solar team has been formed again for this round. A lot of the same members from the first round are on the team again. We have some new members. And they're going to be evaluating proposals beginning on April 29th. There are probably going to be a couple of meetings. Interviews of the selected developers will follow, and then a developer would be recommended to the Board of Selectmen if a proposal is selected.
Okay. Bruce?
These are just non-financial proposals. There's been no financing discussed as far as I'm aware of at this point, is there?
This allows
Okay.
us to negotiate.
Okay.
Okay. Any other?
The property that this is being proposed for, is it town-owned?
Yes.
So it's not taxed anyway. Right. So any revenue off it.
Right, exactly. Correct.
Yeah, the properties are behind the school and behind the public safety complex, right?
Correct.
Russ?
Bruce, if we're getting some revenue that we wouldn't be getting otherwise, and the savings on electricity, how can you argue that it's not a good deal that you suggest?
I just feel that if you put up a building or a structure or something like that, you should be taxed on it at whatever the assessors assess it at. And whatever the negotiated deal is, I mean, they could say, we'll pay you tons of money in the payment in lieu of taxes, but then you're going to pay a higher kilowatt rate. So it all depends upon the negotiating. And I just rather have it be a fair market value. Let them come in with a proposal, what they're going to pay is for the electricity and stuff like that. And then, you know, we'll tax them on the personal property tax for owning the solar arrays. That's, you know, let the chips fall where they may, but I just don't like payment in lieu of taxes, because I think the developer always gets the better end of it, and even down the road.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right. All those in favor of Article 19, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. I declare it majority. Article 20.
Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded to deal with changing a committee. What is this going to do?
Sure, Mr. Moderator, if I could, the town meeting adopted in 2003 and adopted in 1967 and amended in 2003 a working group called the Permanent Building Committee. Essentially, that was designed to oversee the projects and large maintenance on our physical assets, our buildings. One of us is to strike that section of the Article 1, basically disbanding the Permanent Building Committee and creating a capital improvements planning committee. The body has voted in the last 3 years to A, create a capital fund, B, fund a capital fund, and through an election now begin having that on the permanent tax rate. This allows for capital improvement committee to look at the totality and recommend on the capital budget that town meeting has now voted on 2 years. So this includes getting us out of just roofs and doors and gets a capital improvement committee into all requests that have a 5-year life or cost over $10,000. And again, town meeting will still be the appropriating body. This will be a recommending body.
Okay. So will this have broader powers than the original committee, or?
Actually expanded view of what they review, not broader powers. It's still a recommending body. Okay. It's still part of the budget process, but this group would look at our capital budget for anything over $10,000 of 5-year life. Case in point, today we bought a cruiser, we bought a holder tractor system. Those go from department heads through the finance committee to the board of selectmen to town meeting. This would be not unlike would not be unlike the community preservation committee, a recommending body to town meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor of changing the name of the Permanent Building Committee to Capital Improvements Planning Committee, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Article 21.
Would like to move Article 21?
Okay. Personnel bylaw change. What does this do?
This is really just a section in our personal code that we're actually clarifying our probationary period to make the language a little more clear and concise and make it less confusing so that we don't have any questions or issues regarding probationary time and things like that for future employees.
Okay. Okay, any questions? All right, all those in favor of Article 21, please say aye. All those opposed, nay. Declare it unanimous. Article 22.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move Article 22, please. I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Anytime I see an article that has dogs in it, I figure we're going to be here for 2 hours. But what is this?
Mr. Moderator, this was submitted by the town clerk, and basically we voted this at last year's town meeting. The only thing that we're doing is changing the law that was specified. So we had it reviewed, and Attorney General says, well, maybe you should use the other law, which has the applicable rules that we need to enforce.
So it's clarification in terms of our laws versus general laws.
It's basically inserting the section of the statute that defines dangerous and nuisance dogs.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Those in favor of Article 22, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. No opposed. So unanimous. Okay. Articles 23 through 29 are our so-called consent articles, basically housekeeping. So anybody have any trouble with any of these articles? Article 23 is allowing the treasurer to enter into some agreements. 24 is the Board of Selectmen to accept any state and federal grants. Anybody? 25 is to accept Chapter 90 work, money for Chapter 90 work for road improvements. 26 is for the town to enter into intermunicipal agreements, and I would suppose that would be something like the South County ambulance. Is that an intermunicipal agreement?
Purchase of
A bucket truck. Article 27, contract for services and goods with a lifespan of more than 3 years. Allows the treasurer to pay bills for less than with a term of less than 1 year. Article 29 establishes the different towns and the fees and the amount of monies that they can be allowed to expend. Anybody have any questions on any of those articles? Oh, you haven't moved it yet.
Move the question, please. Second.
Okay. Articles 23 through 29. Seconded. Any discussion on any of them? All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay. Yep. Couple things. Have you folks noticed a difference in the acoustics in here tonight compared to this year's? Are they better, worse? Good. Thank you, guys.
It was kind of rowdy over there. Oh, just so you guys know, we could actually hear up there. We could actually hear up here on the stage.
Next year, can we have pads on the seats?
Mr. Moderator, I heard a motion that we do away with seats and we get done much quicker at town meeting.
A town clerk has to notify the residents.
You are hereby directed to warn the inhabitants of said Sunderland qualified to vote in town elections to bring in and cast their votes in offices to be filled for the year 2015 on Saturday, the 2nd of May, 2015 at the Sunderland Elementary School at 1 Swampfield Drive, Sunderland, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Moderator, 1 for 1 year. Selectman, 1 for 3 year. Assessor, 1 for 3 year. Board of Health, 1 for 3 year. Riverside Cemetery Trustee, 1 for 3 year. Planning Board, 1 for 5 years. Library Trustee, 3 years. Elementary School Committee, 2 for 2. And Elementary School Committee to the Town Park Trustees, 1 for 1 year. And that was posted by Friday Constable, April 16th, 2015 at 11 a.m.
We need one more motion.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to dissolve the meeting, please. Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Declare it unanimous. Thank you, folks. Appreciate you coming out and staying.